Hi, my name is Joseph Hammond. I'm a freelance illustrator, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to get that smooth and solid skin texture. Okay, and I'm also going to be talking about how I did the underdrawing. Okay, that's the drawing that we do before we transfer it over onto another sheet, and we do the finished piece on top of that. Okay, so let's get right to the video, and here we go. So this is the underdrawing. This is the drawing that I'm going to be transferring over to the finished piece. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you how I achieved this drawing. Okay, and so the way I started was I take the outside dimensions here, okay, of the reference material, and I duplicate that outside dimensions over here, so I get a little square that is identical to that square over there. Okay, now the first thing I want to know is how to draw that vertical line right there. Okay, because all the horizontals are going to hinge upon that vertical, so I need that first. Okay, so what I do is I measure from this side over here all the way down to under the middle of her chin right here. Then I go from the left hand side all the way to the underneath the bottom of her nose. Then I go from the left hand side to the middle of her eyes. Okay, and I have 3 dots right here, here, and here. Okay, I duplicated those over on this side. And so then I draw a line straight up and down on those lines, and that's how I get that vertical. Okay, now how do I get these horizontals? Okay, I want to get the first horizontal I want to get is the eyebrows. The eyebrows splits the head in half. Okay, it's from the chin to the eyebrows should be about the same halfway mark to the top of her head. Her head goes all the way up to the top of way up here, not here. Okay, so it sounds strange that the eyebrows are 50-50, but that's the way you do it. So I measure from the top line here all the way down to the top of her eyebrow on the left hand side, and I go from this top line down to the top of her eyebrows here on the left hand side and draw a dot. Okay, and I duplicate the same thing on the right hand side here, and then I draw a line through those dots. Okay, and then I do the same thing for the eyes. Okay, I go down from the top to the middle of her eye here, top to the middle of her eye, top to the right hand side eye, and I draw a line, horizontal line through, and then I do the same thing from the top to the bottom of her nose, top to the bottom of her nose, draw a horizontal line through there. Okay, the mouth's a little bit different. I go from the top to the middle of her mouth, go to the top to the middle of her mouth, then I go from the top to the very left hand side of her mouth, and I do the same thing over here, and then I go from the top to the right hand side of her mouth, draw a dot there, and that gives me that angle, okay, that curvature of her mouth, because she's got teeth inside there that causes it to curve. Okay, the others, like the nose and the eyes, are flat. Okay, so now I've got the horizontal line for my chin, mouth, nose, eyes, and eyebrows. Okay, now I can find out where my hairline is right here by measuring the hairline here from the top down to here, measure from the top down to here, put a dot. That's where my hairline is going to be. So I know how wide her, how tall her forehead's going to be. Okay, now I want to find out, I need this outside edge. That's a very important edge, and it's the hardest edge to draw. Okay, so I go from the outside edge on the left to the highest point on her cheek bone right there, and I do the same thing right here. Put a dot. I do the same thing for the eye here, the top of the forehead, and I can go all the way up to her hairline. And I duplicate those dots, measurements, over here to over here. Okay, and put dots. So if I wanted to figure out where the cheek is going to be, where her mouth is, I go from the left hand side to this spot right here, go over here, and put a dot. Now I'm measuring with a ruler. Okay, I use this ruler. You don't have to use this ruler. You can use any ruler that you have laying around the house. Okay, it's the easiest way I can think of drawing this Now that's not the way I usually draw, but you know, it makes it really simple to being able to figure out where these positions are going to be. And if you know, you're like just starting out, or even if you just want to figure out, okay, easy way to figure out the, you know, angle of the jaw or something like that, these measurements really help out. Anyhow, so now that I got that outside edge in, I want to figure out how wide her face is going to be. Okay, so now I go back over to the left hand side, measure from the left hand side all the way to the end of her jaw here, and I duplicate that measurement to here and put a dot, so I know now how wide her face is going to be. I know where the bottom is going to be. Now you can connect the angles of the little dots that I made. You can connect them all together. Like when you're at this stage of the drawing, you're not drawing curves like this. You're drawing the shapes in like this with more straight lines, okay? And you do that with the pencil, you know, that's why I hold it like this. You don't have to, but if you can learn to hold it like this, it's much better. Okay, so that's why you draw like this, like this, like this, like this. See how you can get those angles in, okay? Even you can go this way, this way, this way. See, that's why you hold the pencil like that, okay? And so now I know how wide the face is going to be. I want to figure out, okay, let's say like I wanted to find that angle out. So I measure from the top here down to here. I duplicate that dot there. From here to here, I duplicate that dot. And at the bottom of her jawline, I duplicate that dot the same way here to here. And that gives me that angle, okay? Because that angle is very important to know that jaw is going back in space. Okay? So that's another thing. Back when I was in school, they taught us to think of this drawing, even at this stage, as a three-dimensional piece. Okay? You're not thinking of it as a flat thing with a side of a face over here and a side of a face over here. You're thinking of it as a side of the face over here, side of the face over here, and the back of the head over here. Okay, so it's more like a box. Okay, if you can think of it as a box here, it makes it a lot easier to think of it as 3 dimensions. Now the way they taught us to do that is think of the eyes, for instance, as glasses. Okay, she's got glasses on, and then it goes from here, this is where the hinge is, and this is where the arm goes back. Okay, and then she's got one of those straps on to hold her glasses on that wraps around the back of her head. Okay, and comes out over here. Same thing with the nose, it goes back up to here. This is where the hinge is going to be. It goes back on the side of the face. This is the side of the face, okay? And it goes back and it whips around with that strap and comes out right over here. And there's another line that goes across. The mouth is a little bit different. It's going to be more like a horseshoe. It hinges here, goes straight back, and loops around. Now, a lot of times will draw those lines in there, wrapping around. Think of it, you know, this is your preliminary drawing. You can draw all kinds of lines on it and everything. It's not, you know, you're not going to hang it up on the wall or anything. So, you know, this is where you're going to be figuring out. It's like the framework of a house, okay? These are all the frames, and all these things are going to hang on to those framework that you just drew. The neck, for instance, is a stovepipe. Think of it as a stovepipe that is sticking up into the head, okay? And the way you figure that out, see this ellipse that I've drawn here? That is a kind of a round circle that goes around here, because it's not 2 lines that go up and down. Okay, that would make it flat, right? This is going to be wrapped around. This is the front of the neck here. This is the back of the neck here. Okay, you have to be able to fool your brain to think of this as 3 dimensions. Once you can fool your brain to think of it as 3 dimensions, you can draw it as 3 dimensions. Until that time, you're going to be drawing it as a flat object, okay? So all these drawings underneath the drawing is basically there to convince your brain that these things are happening. Same thing with here. Okay, this is the drapery, this is the clothing, the collar is going to go up and around. Do you see where I've drawn through the form? Okay, I draw through the form and down, because this is where the collar goes in behind her head, but I know it's going back around her head and comes back out here. Okay, so you can draw around that form. Okay, now same thing with here on the collar, shoulder. I draw around the form. These are little beadworks that'll be there, and that goes up and around like this. I know it's going around the other side of her back. Okay, even though I don't see it, I've never really seen it, but I know that's what it's going to be doing. So I wrap it around there like that, and that gives that shoulder form. It tells me that shoulder is rounded and I can grab a hold of it like this, right? Okay, and so same thing over here, but not quite as much over here. Okay, because the figure is going back in space like this. Okay, 3/4 view, and you want this to fall back. All the details and stuff are going to be over here, not over here. Okay, and so this is going to be a little bit flatter. The same thing with the hair. This side will have a little bit more detail in the hair. This side is just pretty much going to be a black flat shape, and that causes it to fall farther back in space. Now this the hair band that she has on there, I didn't really like it at first, so I was going to do this. And then I changed my mind and went back to that. So in the final piece, it'll be that hair band rather than this one here. Okay. One last thing is the perspective. Okay. I figure the person who took this photograph was probably a little bit lower than her eye level. So this is where your horizon line would be, like here. Okay. So that anything that is above that eye line, this is just a very simple perspective. Anything that's above that horizon line is going to slightly angle down towards that horizon line. Okay, vanishing point is way out here somewhere, so you don't really worry about that. But it's going to be slightly going down, and at the point where the horizon line meets, like maybe the nose or mouth here, it's going to be flat. Okay, and like the chin here. Do you see how the chin is actually angled up like that rather than flat or going down? If it went down like this, it would look strange, right? Because it goes up like this. It's telling me that she's in perspective. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind when you're drawing. Okay, that can come later if you're really interested in it. You can get a really good book on perspective. They're all over the place. And it's always interesting. So that is basically how I got this drawing here. Okay, the whole thing came down was a buddy of mine came up to visit me from Florida. He was a high school friend, and I thought I'd try this out on him, right? And actually, we drew like hundreds of dots on a different image, and he was able to do it actually, and he can't draw at all. So, I figured, okay, this probably will work for people who are just beginning, and maybe it'll make drawing a lot easier and a lot more fun than trying to struggle and not understanding what you're doing. Because I figure most of the people are not going to be going to like 5-6 years of art school. So this is a good way of sort of understanding how to put in your proportions. Okay, so from here we're going to go to the final video where we're going to be in the final piece. So let's get started with the finished piece here. Okay, as you can see, I transferred the image from my last drawing onto this paper. Okay, and I used, it's a carbon paper called Saral Transfer Paper. It's S-A-R-A-L, and you can buy that in any art store, and it transfers really well. And so I'm going to get started with the eye. Okay, I started by drawing with pastels, and you have to do that with this technique is because you need to fill up all the little nooks and crannies before you can go over the top of it with color pencils. And so, okay, before I forget, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video, or if you learned anything from the video, if you could hit the like button and the subscribe button. Okay, it helps me out a lot. It tells YouTube that you like this kind of video, and they help me out that way. Okay, so I'd really appreciate it. So back to the eye. The eye is a round ball that sits inside of the eye socket. Okay, so now you have to make sure that the eye looks like a round, like a marble in there, right? So one of the ways you do it is the iris, which is the dark part of the eye, is translucent. It's sort of like a jelly, right? And you can go in where the highlight is, that light area there, and the light travels through that iris and comes out the other side. So it's lightest on the opposite side of the highlight, and the darkest right around the highlight. And if you can get that look, it creates a look, more of a realistic look to the eye. Without it, it just, it doesn't look really realistic. Now, another thing about the whites of the eye. The whites of the eye are never really white, okay? They're more of a cool gray color. And you don't want to get them as light as, like if you look over to the left on the reference material, see how light the whites of her eye is on the right-hand side eye? Well, if you look at it, it also kind of starts to pop out, right, of her eye there. And you want the eyeballs to sit inside this eye socket. So remember not to get the eyeball, the whites of the eye too light. Okay, you want to keep the values sort of down on that area. That's a mistake I used to make all the time, of getting the whites of the eye too white, and it looks like it's popping out of her eye. Okay, now I just mentioned the word value. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you what a value is. A value is you got white and black. Okay, and then if you mix the two together, you'll get middle gray, and anything on one side of the middle gray is going to be go all the way to black. Okay, and anything on the other side of the middle gray is going to go all the way to white. It's going to go in little segments, stages, and that is what you call your value scale. Okay, and you have to understand values. Values is a hard thing to understand and to be able to see, and a lot of people will use that darkened, like a plastic plexiglass, and put it up, upside down or right above your eyes there, and you can see the reflection of the reference material or the live person, and that will give you the values. Another technique that I can use, and I think works great for me, is you squint. Okay, if you can't tell, oh gosh, I can't tell if that's darker than here or lighter than here, you squint your eyes, and for some reason when you squint your eyes, it simplifies the values. Okay, you don't see all the little nuances of the changes of the values, which become confusing, and I think that'll help you out a lot in seeing if that area needs to be darker or that area needs to be lighter. Okay. Also, remember I always mentioned my handheld mirror. That helps out a lot. Also, not only in values, but in the drawing, especially in the drawing stage. It'll tell you that if things are not correct, if things need to be larger here and smaller here, or something's just completely off, your mirror will tell you. Okay. Now, the mirror always tells the truth, right? So anyhow, now let's get to the form real quick here. Because this drawing here, the form is extremely important because her head has a lot of form. That's one of the reasons why I really liked this reference material when I picked it, was because, man, I could see the modeling of her head. She's got it just the roundness of her forehead, the roundness of her cheeks. Everything is completely modeled. I really like that. And to someone like that draws like this, it's exciting to see all the modeling that's going to be going on, and you can actually get that yourself. Okay, the modeling is to get that. Remember, I mentioned about the little ant that crawls across the guy's head or the woman's head. You're traveling across the person's head. Your little ant, and the closer you get to the light source, the lighter the area becomes. And if you go down into a little dip of a valley, it gets a little bit darker. Then you come out of the valley and it gets a little bit lighter and lighter and lighter until, like in this case, you hit that highlight over on the right-hand side of her head. Okay? And that's how you create the form. Okay? So now this is what the video is really about, is how to get that smooth skin texture, right? Okay. How do we do that? It's a layering technique, and I find that it's very important that you do use this paper. Okay, you cannot use like a Canson paper or a Strathmore paper. It just doesn't hold enough pigment. Okay, with this sanded paper, it will hold a lot of pigment. Now I'm going to put all the information, like the pencils I use and the paper I use. It's going to be down in the description. Okay, it'll be easier for you to copy over. So what we're doing here is you need to lay down your pastels first, get your dark values and your light values in, get your mother color in. That's the main color of that area in. All the other colors are a mixture of that mother color. Okay, in this case here, it's sort of a reddish, like a terracotta kind of color. And, you can see that I've used like a yellow ochre to get the colors, the mother color. And then I've used some brown. And then as it goes into the shadow, it gets a little bit cooler. And once you do that, I go over the whole thing with a white pastel pencil. Okay, and now that, like I said before on the eye there, it fills it up about halfway, and then I go back and I duplicate that, what I did earlier with the pastel pencils, with the color pencils. And then I go over the top of that again with my pastel pencil. And I repeat this maybe 3-4 times. And this is the only kind of paper I know that I can actually, I was really surprised when I did it, that I can lay down a color pencil, and then over the top of that I can go back in with pastels again, because there is enough tooth left that it'll hold that pastel again. Usually, if you put down color pencil and you try to go over the top of it with pastel pencil, that pastel pencil won't stick. It'll just fluff off. But with this paper, it will, and that's what gives you that really solid look, and that's what I was looking for. I looked for about 35 years. I tried pretty much everything. I tried watercolor first. Then I tried, burnishing technique. Burnishing technique is where, you press hard and you kind of smudge the color pencil into the paper. And, that works, but, still ends up with some little dots here and there. And the problem with that when you're photographing the image, okay, is that the camera goes down through that little dot, hits the white paper and bounces back out, and you get a little speckle. You really get the speckles on the camera. And so, I was trying to avoid those, little gritty looking dots. And this is the best technique I've found so far. The first time I tried this kind of paper, I hated it. It was gritty and it was hard to work with. I just didn't like it, and so I put it aside. And then I thought, I'm going to give that paper another chance. So I did, and then I started to understand how the paper worked, what the advantages of this paper was, and what the disadvantages of it was. And once you figure out how to manipulate the paper and how it works, well with color pencils or how it works well with pastels, because it's basically a pastel paper. Uh, you cannot work color pencil directly on this stuff. It'll just come out gritty and it just doesn't really work, right? So it's basically pastel pencil, but pastels and color pencils. To me, it works really well. Um, so, that was how you get that to look smooth, okay? Now, you have to probably put down, like I said, 4 layers. I've never put down, more than that. And once you get the look that you want to have, obviously that's where you're going to stop. You don't have to keep on adding more layers and more layers. Because I don't really know how many layers you can add on it, because I've never really gone that far. I reach the look that I want to get before that. Now, I don't really think I really talked about color too much here. Okay, this is a warm light source. Okay, she's got a warm light source hitting her, and so when you have a warm light source hitting you, you have a cool shadow shapes. Okay, cooler, not cool. Okay, I don't want anybody to go, iceberg color in the, blue in the shadow and red in the light area. So, when I first started and the instructor said, warm, cool, I went overboard, and, everything in, with the dark areas are blue and everything in the light areas was like really hot pink. And, you learn that it's a degree, Um, if you have a cool light source, you have warmer shadow shapes. So when you do have a reflected light source, a reflected light is always cooler because it's lost its intensity. Okay, so like if you have a white house next door to you and you have your window open, the light source coming into your room is going to be cooler. Okay, that means that your shadow shapes were going to be warmer. Okay, so that's what makes those really beautiful warm shadow shapes. So anyways, this is the finished piece. Okay, I think it came out pretty good. I think I got the likeness of her. I got the smoothness of the skin, which the video is about. And I hope that I was able to explain it well enough that you can understand, how to achieve it. Okay. The only problem I think I've noticed with this is that the forehead is not far enough out and the chin is not far enough in, causing her to look a little bit more straight up and down than the reference material. I think I should have pulled the chin in a little bit farther and the forehead out a little bit farther, and I think it would have got that angle correctly. But I was really trying not to get her to look so PO'd, right? Because she looks kind of upset, and I don't want the drawing to look like somebody that's really mad at you, right? So, but when you're following the reference material, you end up really pretty getting as close as possible to that. So, she still does look a little upset. But anyways, if you like this video again, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, and that helps me out, and I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video. I think it might be fun to try a next video on textures, right? Maybe I'll try a drawing that has maybe 4 or 5 different textures in it, and so I can show everybody how to achieve those different textures. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.